Thanks so much for the invitation to present to you. My name is Sarah Frazee, and as introduced, I'm a representative from South Africa, from an organization called Conservation South Africa. And over the last 3 years, we've been building a business model working with a job creation program to professionalize herding, and we call them eco-rangers, in a way to help communal farmers access the formal meat market. And I've been giving a lot of technical presentations, and it takes at least 20 minutes for me to explain this innovative business model, but I've been asked to do it in 5, so instead I'm just going to tell you a story. And basically, our story begins in a way that probably is not unexpectedly, given that we're a conservation organization. We started working adjacent to a national park, and the livestock farmers adjacent to that area were losing between 7 and 50% of their animals, which is their income, to predation from animals that were coming in and out of the park. And as a result, they were setting traps, putting out poisons, just like they do sort of with the wolves here in the Midwest, and having hunts. And so this was an issue that we were particularly interested in because it was decimating predator populations, but also the traps in particular were also killing antelope, tortoises, anything else, and it wasn't actually reducing the loss of livestock to predation. So it was a lose-lose situation. So we started working with these farmers on a range of non-lethal predator management techniques. And we tried livestock collars, which predators who attack around the neck couldn't get through. And then we tried Anatolian sheepdogs, which we heard were going to chase off predators. And every time, the predation rates continued to be quite high. And the livestock owners were getting, in South Africa we call it gatvol. They were getting fed up with us. And so we started, and our research showed that the one thing that kept predators away was actually the traditional herder, a human. Basically, having a human with the livestock, we discovered that the predators don't come anywhere near. So based on the research that we did, we went to national government and we decided, you know what, using traditional knowledge around herding on communal lands and bringing back this tradition through the national government youth employment program, we could potentially not only achieve improved environmental management in South Africa's rangelands, which are about 70% of the country, but also at the same time provide an important job creation opportunity. So one of the areas, in addition to the predation management, we started looking at other rangeland issues. And in South Africa, all of our catchments of our water systems, we're the 10th most water scarce country in the world. And our catchments are traditionally rangelands. We don't have a lot of forest, only 6% of our area is forest, so it's mostly rangeland. And we use livestock management. How many of you heard the holistic savory technique, holistic livestock management? So a few. So it's basically planned grazing and crawling to restore degraded lands. And because this is about water, and because I find that people don't usually understand in our context, trees are bad for the environment. It's really hard for most people to get their heads around. But basically, what happens when you have an invasive tree species in a habitat that's designed for grasses is that the reduction in water, if you have the same level of rain, so you have 1,200 millimeters of rain, you have 472 millimeters of runoff that goes downstream and supports other water users and beneficiaries. 20 to 40 years later, that amount is actually reduced by 74%, which also causes an increase in the amount to restore the landscape back to rangelands. So our model is basically uses crawling, and on the left you see when we concentrate the cattle on the left, we get a 96% return of basal cover by within 6 months, whereas the basal cover on the left-hand side was mostly just regrowth of the alien invasive species. So we've already established real results on 17,000 hectares. Our livestock farmers have been received $210,000 from a baseline of 0. We've improved the downstream user access to consistent and clean water to 1 million downstream benefits, which is already at scale. But now, through the SWFF grant and our partner at Conservation International, we're looking at expanding into at least 3 other countries, in particularly Kenya and Botswana. So we're addressing real challenges, and our business model trains herders, and this is a first communal livestock in Africa that has a barcoded ear tag that's up to the traceability system that allows them to access the European market. So it's really big. It's about working with 50 million pastoralists in Africa on 43% of the African continent and accessing that formal market to make sure that Africa doesn't have to import 20% of its meat. Thanks.